I'm really bad at putting tires on wheels. I've tried it before and it usually just ends in hours of beating on a tire in frustration, followed by a trip to the tire store. However, a package just came in that means that it's time for me to finally learn. If you're new here, I'm building an off-road Explorer powered by a 12-valve Cummins. A couple videos ago, I went ahead and picked up a pair of used 37-inch tires. The reason I went with a used pair was to test out how well these large tires would work on this small SUV before I commit to buying a new set. And because I'm cheap. Mostly because I'm cheap. The only issue was I didn't have any wheels that fit them. I do have a mismatched set of 16-inch wheels that fit the 8-lug axles on the Explorer, but in order to fit the bigger tires and clear the big 3/4 ton axle brakes, I decided to go with tires that mount on a slightly bigger 17-inch wheel. Those new wheels finally came in. My first issue with trying to mount the tires was the lug nuts. The ones I had were too big a diameter to actually fit inside the wheels, so I had to get some smaller ones. Luckily, I was able to get them locally and for much cheaper than online. That almost never happens and it saved me a week of shipping, which was nice. The first step was just to use a pair of pliers to pull the valve stem through the wheel. Next was the first big lesson that I learned when I was mounting these tires. I usually try to just use soapy water, but it wasn't quite slick enough, which contributed to some of the frustrations I had with trying to mount these before. This time I just used straight soap, no water, and it seemed to work much better. It's best to cover both the bead of the tire and the lip of the wheel. Another big factor that helped me mount these tires is that while I was mounting them, I was much more aware of where the drop center was. That's the area inside the wheel that is the smallest diameter. The objective is to make sure that the part of the bead that you've gotten inside the wheel is always resting in the drop center, so you don't have to stretch the bead over a large diameter to get it inside the wheel. For my wheel, this meant that I needed to put the outside face of the wheel into the tire first, since the drop center is closer to the outside face of the wheel. Once part of the bead is in the drop center, it's just a matter of pushing down on the wheel while also pulling the wheel into the tire to make sure that the bead is always resting inside the drop center. It can also help to twist the wheel. This is all much easier with excessive amounts of lubricant. Once the first lip is inside the tire, it's time to move on to the second. This is the point where the tire irons can make a huge difference. I got these 24-inch tire irons for $6 a piece at Harbor Freight, and although I'm pretty sure that they would bend if I put my shoulder into them, they still work surprisingly well, and I would recommend them as a cheap option. The whole time that I was trying to pry the tire over the lip of the wheel, I was also kneeling on the near side of the tire to try to keep the bead in the drop center as much as possible. Now that the wheel is inside the tire, you'll notice that the bead doesn't sit on its seat like it should. The way we force the bead onto its seat is by using air pressure. This is called seating the bead. The more airflow you have out of your compressor, the better, and you can even remove the valve core for more flow if your tire is really being stubborn. In my case, 3 out of 4 tires seated without any additional motivation, and on the 4th it was just a matter of smacking the wheel with a rubber mallet and pressing down on the tire in different places to get it close enough to where the air could do its magic. Oh my god, I built a monster truck. It's not like I didn't know that I was building a monster truck, but seeing it all put together, doesn't it look good? Now that the wheels and tires are on, I can finally measure my exact ride height. The rear of the Explorer is much taller than the front due to the spring over axle swap, so I've been needing to order some taller springs for the front. However, I didn't know exactly how big the springs needed to be. I currently have some 2-inch lift springs meant for an Explorer on the front, and it seems like some 6-inch lift springs meant for an F-150 will do the trick, after factoring in the higher spring rate that'll help support the weight of the Cummins. Big changes. I'm glad I'm going to be stepping up so large in spring height, since not only does it mean more travel, it also means my springs will fit my new shocks much better. A few videos ago, I purchased these rough country shocks based on the fact that they had a very large 10-inch stroke. However, I knew going into it that their compressed length was a bit too tall, but I had just planned on making the shock towers taller to suit. But now that I'm going to be getting much taller springs to match, there won't be such a drastic difference in the height of the spring and the height of the shock, which will make things easier. You know, Someday I'm probably going to have to address the fact that my Explorer has now become too tall to drive out of the garage, but that sounds like a future me problem. Thanks for hanging out with me in my garage today, and subscribe and stick around if you want to see the next one.